Please remember to post a like, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you can always get my latest travel videos. God Morgan from Stockholm, Sweden. It's the city that's famous for a very top-level socialism, also the Stockholm Syndrome, and also extremely high prices. And they're not kidding about that. I got here from Tallinn, which is a very low-cost center city, and the public transit ride, it's an express train that comes into the city center from the airport, $37 one way. So I'll give you an idea how expensive it is. $37 Canadian dollars one way. So I got a return ticket. So that's one thing that's going to hit you. I bought a sandwich at a 7-Eleven, cost me $9 Canadian, so it's an expensive city. Everything costs money. Public restroom is going to cost you $1.50 Canadian to get into. So I know that's important, so to know about this city. I'm going to show you around a little bit. So God Morgen means good morning in Swedish. This is the Stockholm waterfront, and I'm going to be going into this building, this very spectacular looking building. The Stockholm City Hall was built in 1923. The City Hall Tower is 106 meters tall. The Stockholm City Hall is famous for its architecture and large, grand ceremonial halls. It is also the location of the Nobel Prize banquet, which is the City Hall. And I'll be doing a 10 a.m. City Hall tour inside there. For today, I should give a shout out to my friend, colleague, and associate Greg, who helped me plan this day in Stockholm. So thanks a lot, Greg. And if it doesn't go well, it's your fault. I'm just kidding. The main debate chamber of Stockholm City Hall, the ceiling is made of wood beams which are exquisitely painted. This is the Nobel Prize main banquet hall, where the post-awards dinner is held. The ceiling is again made of exquisitely painted wood beams, but the walls are made of thousands of solid gold tiles. Currency in Sweden is the Swedish krona, abbreviated SEK. It's not the euro. 1 euro equals about 11 Swedish krona. Credit cards are widely accepted everywhere for everything, even for some public toilets. And all the time I was in Stockholm, I never had to use cash. I only used my credit card. Well, that was a 1-hour tour. It costs 11 Canadian dollars. Of the Stockholm City Hall. I think it was worth it. Quite a beautiful city hall inside, as I showed you. The other feature of it is that if you take the tour, there is a free clean washroom that you can use, which is rare in this city. So there's a little traveler's tip for you. That again is Stockholm City Hall. It's got a very distinct look to it. It's part Viking, part monarchy, and a lot of Italian Renaissance influence, and as you can tell in the architecture. As many of you may or may not know, Sweden was once a great empire, second only to the Spanish Empire in size. A lot of people didn't know that. Sweden had a huge empire at one time in the 1600s. I think I'm going to go to that cathedral there. This futuristic looking building is the Radisson Waterfront Hotel. Stockholm is built on 14 islands, and interestingly, the water is freshwater, as Stockholm sits 37 kilometers from the sea being the Baltic Sea. Stockholm was established in year 1252. About 1 million people live in the city of Stockholm. The metropolitan population is 2.4 million. It's about a quarter of the population of Sweden lives in metropolitan Stockholm. The architecture in Stockholm, that's how it's pronounced, Stockholm, is quite neoclassical and quite grand. It almost reminds me of some place like Paris. Very imperial, because of course this is a kingdom, unlike Estonia, which is fairly simple. And you'll notice that here, the imperial look to the buildings.
Foods to try in Sweden. Köttbullar. Often dubbed the quintessential Swedish food, these meatballs are a cultural icon, served with lingonberry jam, pickled cucumber, and creamy mashed potatoes. They've been a staple in your closest IKEA store, but nothing beats the authentic Swedish version. Surströmming. Swedes consider this fermented herring a delicacy. Its pungent aroma is unmistakable. The herring is caught, then allowed to ferment and brine for several months. The resulting fish is incredibly strong-smelling and often served outdoors at kiosks. Due to its potent scent, it's traditionally eaten with thin bread, potatoes, and onions. Blood pudding. This black pudding, made from pig's blood and flour, is a dish that shows Sweden's no-waste philosophy. It's mixed with spices and other ingredients, then cooked until it becomes a thick, sausage-like consistency. It's sliced and fried before serving, usually with lingonberry jam. It's a unique taste experience.
Tower in the distance is the Stockholm City Hall, where I was. There's some magnificent looking buildings around, and then here is the Swedish Parliament building. And obviously the Swedish Parliament building is pretty close to the Stockholm City Hall. This is the national capital, and obviously these are also government buildings. They have some interesting ways of scaffolding here to block the view of this beautiful building here, but overall it's a very impressive looking city. We crossed through that archway, and you see the back of the Swedish Parliament, and now we're into an area called Gamla, which is the old town. Not very far from the Parliament building is the Royal Palace. Of course, Sweden is a monarchy ruled by a king and queen, and this is, I guess, where their ceremonial home is. And I think they're going to have a changing of the guards. Not really sure if I'll be able to see that without a ticket. This very pretty square in Gamla is the Nobel Prize Museum. Nobel Prize is actually given out at the Stockholm City Hall, where I first was, and it's given out in the grand room that I showed you. So I'm going to see if I'm going to go in there. Well, I spent about 20 minutes in there, and that's all I could spend in the Alfred Nobel Museum. Cost $16 to get in, 16 Canadian dollars. So 20 minutes, 16 bucks. Think about it. I did learn that a few people won Nobel Prizes. That was Al Gore, Barack Obama, and Jimmy Carter. I didn't know that, I don't think, before I went in. We're going to have the changing of the guard ceremony here. That's what the guards look like. The back of the Royal Palace, and Gamla is through that area there. That's the old town. I don't recommend it. It's totally packed with tourists and lines everywhere, and everything's expensive. This is, of course, the lakefront, because it's a series of islands, and we're going to go to the next island now. The architecture in Stockholm is actually pretty spectacular. Here's a building, I don't know what it is. I think it's a meeting house, like a meeting hall of some type. It's just gorgeously decorated. As you can see around, it's got a nice vibe to it with the architecture. It's kind of original. I've never seen anything like this before in any other city. I'll show you some more. We're going to go into the Swedish History Museum, which is a little bit of a walk away from the main core. Entrance should be free. Well, the History Museum definitely is worth it. It was free to enter. I was in there for 45 minutes and it was free. nice clean washrooms, and a very good explanation of the history of Sweden in English as well as Swedish. So I would recommend coming here. It's a bit of a walk away from the main Gamla stan, which is the old town, and that's probably why the admission is free, whereas Nobel Prize Museum costs 15 euros to enter. I think it was a good time, and also it's a more interesting neighborhood. It's at a more interesting neighborhood. You can see where Swedish people in the downtown area live. The buildings are quite nicely designed, but it's a residential street, it's a neighborhood. And that's where the Swedish History Museum is. This is the building to the left. Quite a nicely decorated condo building. I think there's an apartment building. As I said, it's a residential street. And interesting. The Swedish Army Museum should be free to enter. Well, that for sure was the best military museum I've ever been to in my life. That's the outside of it with the 3 crowns and the Swedish flag up top. Unlike most military museums, there was no glory in there. They weren't showing off, great weapons of Sweden or anything like that, or any military generals and how they conquered lands. It showed the brutality of war. The Swedes are neutral, and so they don't glorify war. And that museum basically goes through what happened in the history of Sweden and the history of Europe with war. It's the best museum I've ever seen that's dedicated to the military. So I highly recommend it. It's free of charge. I spent about an hour in there, and it was very good. And I don't think I would have ever learned as much if I hadn't gone in. So it was a good choice. In this absolutely beautiful spot in Stockholm is the Medieval Museum of Sweden, and it should be free. I'll check it out. The Stockholm, Sweden Medieval Museum is excellent as well. It's free of charge, and I've already spent about 40 minutes in here. So this is going to be my sign off for today. Hope you enjoyed Stockholm. If you have any questions, let me know. Please subscribe, post a like, and hit the notification bell for future videos.